So we've been examining physicalism, the theory that the mind, our beliefs and our desires and feelings are all just physical things, in particular physical states of our brain in one way or another. But this week we're looking at some reasons to think that physicalism just might not actually be correct. And in particular, we're paying really close attention not so much to beliefs and desires anymore, but to these things that Frank Jackson calls qualia. And by qualia, he just means these feelings of what it's like for us to experience certain things, like the sight of red, or the taste of pineapple, or the smell of lilacs, the feel of corduroy, etc. It's just these feelings of what it is like. So, for an example, if you look at this image, there is a certain sense of what it's like for you to look at the picture on the left, and the way that the picture on the right looks, well, that's a different sense of what it's like. The picture on the right gives you different qualia than the picture on the left, probably. If you're red-green colorblind, I'm not sure how this image is going to look for you, because essentially what's happened is that the wavelengths of light have been switched in each of these pictures from red to green, but it gives you a different experience of what it's like. Just like looking at this screen gives you a certain experience of what it's like, you get a certain quale or qualia from that, which is different from the qualia you get from this, which is different from the qualia you get from that. So your ability of your mind to have these qualia seems to be this thing, and what, if physicalism is correct, it must be that those qualia are physical objects of some sort. Because after all, physicalism is just the doctrine that the only kinds of things that exist are physical events. And so anything mental, like beliefs and desires, and these qualia we are looking at, they must all be physical states of, presumably, the brain somehow. But what we're going to see, what Jackson shows us, are some arguments to think that these qualia just could not possibly be physical states of your brain or physical states of anything else. And so if he's right, it's going to turn out that I guess physicalism is not correct. There must be some non-physical stuff out there in the universe. So let's take a look at the first argument against physicalism. And this is this argument from knowledge that Jackson gives. He tells this story about the scientist Mary, and she's locked up in a black and white room, unfortunately, from her birth. So she only sees black and white throughout her entire history. But we're supposing that this is sometime far in the future in which we figured out everything that there is to know about physics and how color vision works in particular, and we're just going to assume that Mary knows every single physical fact that there is to know about how color vision works. She knows all about different wavelengths of light, how those wavelengths of light hit the photoreceptors on the back of your retina, how those cause certain pigments to isomerize and cause electrical signals to get sent back to your occipital lobe, and she knows it in way more detail than we even know right now. So, we're just going to assume that Mary, who's been raised in this black and white room, knows all the physical facts there are to know about color and color vision. And then what Jackson says is, well, imagine that, on her 35th birthday or what have you, Mary finally leaves this black and white room and sees for the first time in person a ripe red tomato. Now, Jackson says it seems like she would learn something new when she looks at that tomato. In particular, she'd learn what it is like to see red. She'd have this red quale for the very first time. But remember, we had assumed from the get-go that Mary has all the physical knowledge there is to know. So if she's learning something new, that new knowledge must be non-physical knowledge. She must know some fact which is not a physical fact. if she has now learned something new when she's left her room. So the basic intuition here is that Mary could study all the physical stuff there is to know about how color vision works. She can know everything about how the neural system works. She can have looked in and seen all the different complicated ways your cone cells in your retina are connected to one another and to the optic centers in your brain. But if you suppose that there's somebody who has tetrachromacy, that's someone who has 4 cone cells instead of 3 cone cells. So these folks seem to be able to see colors that I, at any rate, and most of us, cannot see. And so you might suppose that such a person with tetrachromacy could look at the little rectangle in the lower right-hand corner here, and where I see just one white qualia, they would see different colors, many different qualia of colors, because they have this 4th cone cell. And so what Jackson is arguing here is, look, I could tell you everything you want to know about how that 4th cone cell hooks up with the rest of their nervous system, and you would still not know what it is like for them to see multiple colors in that rectangle down on the right. You would not know what the color looks like that they're seeing that you can't see. And if that's the case, then it seems like, yeah, that fact about what it's like to see that color, that must be a non-physical fact. If we assume that we know everything there is to know physically about what's going on in their mind when they're looking at that thing, they must be knowing something else. So, in short, the knowledge argument just says, look, Mary knows every physical fact about color vision, but she does not know what it's like to see red. So, therefore, what it's like to see red, that must be some non-physical fact. That's a new non-physical fact she learns when she leaves her room. When we come back, I'll look at a couple other different arguments for thinking that these qualia or feelings of what it's like are not physical facts.